Hi, my name's Esther Cole Adelsheim. I'll be talking to you today about a timed mowing in combination with broadcast seeding increases native plant coverage in a California grassland. So thanks so much for joining me. First, I wanted to start by placing the experimental work that I'll be discussing today within a broader context of native seed use on the lands that I help to manage. So the lands owned by Stanford are extensive, 8180 acres of land comprised of academic buildings, commercial and office space, housing, working lands, and undeveloped lands. So we support the use of native seed to restore sites in urban and semi-urban locations, post-construction or maintenance, and agricultural sites that have problems with erosion. So a typical context is illustrated by the image to the right of this first slide. But the use case that our experimental work focuses upon is the application of native seed within grasslands with an established plant community that has a high proportion of non-natives. So basically, we wanted to understand whether or not restoration techniques that operated with a relatively light touch could actually be successful, and how much investment of time and money would be required to achieve management targets. The restoration of native grasslands is a priority for the Stanford Conservation Program because there are several species of conservation concern within the landscapes that are adapted to native grasslands and the structure and the ecosystem functions they provide. So on the top is California tiger salamander, and at the bottom is California red-legged frog that are key species of conservation concern in Stanford's grasslands. There are a number of factors that contribute to relative competitive dominance of non-native plants in California grasslands. Among them, altered disturbance regimes, nitrogen deposition, plant traits, and underlying site conditions. Grassland restoration tools have typically sought to address the mechanisms that support non-natives and should shift competitive dynamics in favor of natives. Unfortunately, in our case, the restoration toolkit is limited because our species of conservation concern are sensitive to some types of interventions. For example, California red-legged frogs are sensitive to chemical contaminants, so herbicide use likely impacts the frogs. California tiger salamanders, on the other hand, spend most of their lives in subterranean habitats that could be impacted by soil disturbance caused by scraping off top layers of soil to remove seed banks of non-natives. So in other instances, some of the interventions that are common were deemed impractical over the long term for a number of reasons. So we chose timed mowing and broadcast seeding as a combined treatment that we hope would suppress weeds and increase native plant coverage over large scales while having a relatively low impact on our species of conservation concern. So through our experimental work, we sought to evaluate changes in native percent cover. Furthermore, we wanted to have the ability to maximize effectiveness by selecting the appropriate seed palette for a given location. We were also interested in determining which species showed the highest rates of establishment and evaluate the effect of seeding year and aspect on establishment of native species. We were interested in year effects, not because I anticipate ever being able to successfully predict weather and select suitable years for treatment applications, but because understanding the level of variation among years helps us to refine and quantify our assessment of the overall effectiveness of a mowing and seeding intervention. So we set up an experimental block design to answer our research questions, replicating across north, south, east, west, and flat aspects. We seeded out a number of grasses and forbs known to exist within our local ecosystem, and we started the experiment in 2016, 2017, and 2018, and we have administered treatments every year since the start of the experiment. Based upon our results from 2020, there was no interaction between treatment and aspect. There was a significant treatment effect. With the highest percent cover of seeded natives found in plots seeded 4 years in a row. Notably, the effect size was relatively small. Mowing and seeding increased the percent cover of native species only by roughly 5% relative to controls. Across all plots, seeded species differed in their levels of establishment and coverage. To the right is a table that lists seeded species from most to least coverage. The most abundant grass species were Stipa pulchra and Bromus carinatus. The most common forbs were Eschscholzia californica, Lasthenia glabrata, Lupinus nanus, and Cicericium bellum. Melica californica and Stipa lepida were notably not found in monitoring plots. We observed a significant effect of aspect. East-facing and flat slopes had the highest percent cover of native species. Importantly, species differed in their relative success across aspects. In the top table, we have the overall summary, the same one that I showed in a slide previous, highlighting the 3 species with the most coverage and the species that were absent across all plots. In the row of tables below, where the species are listed in the same order, we see a different pattern of presence and absence, as well as the relative abundance by aspect. The 3 or 4 most common species are highlighted in green, and species that were absent are highlighted in red. After the first and second year of treatment application, we see that the percent cover of seeded species differs by year of initial seeding, but significantly those rankings changed over time. One of the more surprising results of our study was that species richness, particularly of native species that were not seeded, was much higher within restoration treatments. So either mowing alone or facilitation by seeded natives promotes native plant diversity, biodiversity, above and beyond the addition of seeded species. So as we think about the results of our study and how we will use the information to guide our management of the landscape, there are several significant take-homes. Given the increases in plant biodiversity and native coverage that we see with treatment applications, we will likely apply this approach moving forward in targeted areas. However, we plan to adjust species palettes based on our observations of establishment success. Unfortunately, the effect sizes were relatively small, so we plan to continue to apply treatments for additional years to evaluate the potential for increases in percent cover of native plant species. So thanks so much to the students and field staff who have helped to monitor our experimental work over the years, and also to our native seed supplier, Hedgerow Farms, who does the great work of native seed production in the first place. A special thanks to you for listening. And if you would like to contact me or learn more about the Stanford Conservation Program, I've listed my email as well as links to our website, Facebook, and Twitter feed. Thank you very much.